Thank you all for coming. Please be seated. I appreciate you coming, Steve. Thanks. Glad to give you a ride home on Air Force One. I really do like working with Steve. He's a thoughtful fella who cares about issues, and this is what we're here to talk about. It's an important issue, which is Social Security. Before I do, I want to thank the community college for hosting us. I'm a big believer in community colleges. Community colleges have got the capacity to change curriculum to meet the needs of a local workforce, for example. And one of the real challenges of the 21st century is to make sure people have got the skills necessary to fill the jobs of the 21st century. And a fabulous place to find those skills is our community colleges. So thanks for what you do. Thanks for being a host. Thanks for letting us come and have what I think you'll find to be a really interesting educational experience about a vital issue confronting the country. I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Bruce Johnson for joining us today. And I appreciate State Treasurer Jeanette Bradley for joining us today. And I want to thank the mayors, Ed Pottigill, who's here. I appreciate you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank Dave Anderson. The last time I saw Dave, I said to Dave, Dave, fill the potholes. It was just a piece of advice. And so I saw him in line coming in. He said, I'm just here to report for duty, Mr. President. I did fill the potholes. You'll get reelected if you want to run again. Anyway, I want to thank Anita Isom, who's with us. Anita is a young lady I met when we landed there at the airport in Cleveland. She is a volunteer, and she has helped and been awarded because of her reading-related activities that benefit others. The reason I like to mention a soul like Anita is that no matter what your age, no matter where you live, you can help this country by becoming a volunteer, by helping somebody who hurts, by teaching somebody to read, or feed somebody who's hungry, or put your arm around somebody who needs love. I like to remind people that the greatest strength of this country is the heart and souls of our fellow citizens and the great compassion of our people. And so if you're interested in serving America, do so by becoming a volunteer in the community in which you live and help change this country one heart and one soul at a time. So Anita, thanks for coming. Thanks for meeting me at the airport. Let me talk about Social Security. I could be talking about a lot of things. Peace and freedom. The world is changing right now because societies are becoming more free. And as societies become more free, more democratic, the world will become more peaceful. Today we went to a little restaurant, and the owner happens to be Lebanese American, and he said, "Thank you, Mr. President, for staying focused on a country like Lebanon and insisting that Lebanon be allowed to have free elections." And I assured him, like I will assure you, that when America speaks, we mean what we say. And when we say free elections to the Syrians, we mean free elections. Get out of Lebanon and let this good country have a free election as scheduled. And when I say get out of Lebanon, I mean out of Lebanon with all your troops and all your security services and all the people trying to influence that government. It is in the world's interest that Lebanon be allowed to have free elections, because a free society will help spread the peace. We're dealing with a lot of issues, and in Washington, D.C., I've submitted a tough budget and expect the Congress to be wise about how they spend your money. I also know that Congress needs to stop debating and get an energy bill to my desk now, during this session. Congress also needs to take serious this issue about Social Security. People say, well, why did you bring it up? I said, I brought it up because I see a serious problem that needs to be fixed now before it's too late. I also brought it up because the job of a president is to confront problems and not pass them on. The easy route in politics is to say, well, we got us a problem, we'll just let the next person handle it. The easy route for a member of the United States Senate is to say, you know, there's a problem, but it perhaps can wait, and we'll just let another United States senator fix it, or same with the House. That's not the way I think. I think I got elected because people expect me, when I see a problem, to bring it to the fore and to work with people to get it solved. And here's the problem in Social Security. There's a lot of people like me getting ready to retire. As a matter of fact, I'm retiring in 4 years. At least I hit retirement age in 4 years, which is convenient. In my case. I turned 62 in 2008. And I'm not the only one turning 62 in 2008. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of us. We're called the baby boomer generation. And not only my generation fixing to retire, we are living longer than previous generations. And not only are we living longer than previous generations, we have been promised greater benefits than the previous generation. In other words, people running for office said, put me in office and I'll increase your Social Security benefits for you. And guess what? They did. And so a lot of us are getting ready to retire. And the problem comes because there's not a lot of people paying into the system. See, in 1950, there were 16 workers for every beneficiary. So you can imagine the load was somewhat lighter than today when there's now 3.3 workers for every beneficiary. And soon there's going to be 2 workers for every beneficiary. You've got fewer workers paying into a system that is going to require more and more outflow because a lot of us are retiring, living longer, and been promised greater benefits, and the math just doesn't work. It's a pay-as-you-go system, by the way. That means when the money goes in, it comes right out. It's not a trust. I mean, some people in America, I suspect, think that the federal government all these years has been collecting your payroll taxes and we're holding it for you. And then when you get ready to retire, we give it back to you. That's not the way it works. The way it works is that we collect your payroll taxes and we pay the current retirees their benefits, and then with leftover money, we spend it on other things. That's the way the system works. It's pay as you go. And in 2017, the pay-as-you-go system is going to go negative. In other words, more money goes out than comes in through payroll taxes, and every year thereafter, if we don't do something, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. To give you an example of how bad it gets, in 2027, the federal government's going to have to come up with $200 billion more a year just to make good on the payments, and it gets worse the next year, and the next year, and the next year. Now, I also want to assure those of you who are on Social Security, you will get your check. See, nothing changes for somebody born prior to 1950. And that's very important for people in Ohio to hear. Because I fully understand a lot of people count on that Social Security check. That Social Security check means a lot to a lot of people in America, and they're counting on it. That's why, for example, in some political campaigns, people try to say to seniors, you know, if so-and-so gets into office, he's going to take your check away from you. That's the old scare tactics. Sometimes during this debate, it seems like people are resorting to those scare tactics. They're telling seniors, you know, really what they're talking about is taking your check away. Let me just tell you point blank. If you're receiving a Social Security check in Ohio, this government of ours will continue to honor you, honor that commitment. This issue isn't about you. This issue is about your grandchildren. The issue confronting the Social Security system is an issue for young workers, young people coming up. You know, one time I was having a discussion and the person said, I saw a survey. I said, oh yeah, what did it say? He said, young workers like me are more likely to think we're more likely to see a UFO than get a Social Security check. Well, that may be pretty close to accurate. I will tell you this, if this federal government doesn't act, your bill, your payroll taxes are going to have to go up a lot in order to pay the promises made to me. Or the government's going to have to slash the benefits. Or the government's going to have to make dramatic cuts in other programs. And so I see a problem. I think the math is clear. And so now's the time to get something done. And so I stood up in front of the United States in my State of the Union address and said to the Congress, here's the problem. And I want to put some ideas on the table, ideas that I didn't necessarily think of, ideas that President Clinton had thought of, or Senator Moynihan, a great member of the United States Senate from New York, who unfortunately has passed away, or former Congressman from Minnesota, Tim Penny. Good ideas. about different ways to permanently fix the problem. And that's what Congress must do. It must permanently fix the problem. 1983, one of my predecessors, President Ronald Reagan, got together with Speaker O'Neill from Massachusetts, and they said, we got a problem, let's fix it. See, the math wasn't working then either. It was called a 75-year fix. They signed the bill. I love the spirit, by the way, of Republicans and Democrats setting aside their political parties and focusing on getting something done for the American people. And the President did that, and the Speaker did that for the 75-year fix. The only problem is 22 years later, we're still talking about it. And so now's the time to bring people together from both parties to have a permanent fix. And all ideas are on the table. And I'm looking forward to discussing any good idea with a Democrat or Republican. I imagine there's some people fearful in Washington, D.C. about maybe laying out an interesting idea and that one of the political parties will get all over them for laying it out. If I have anything to do with it, but there will be political amnesty for people bringing good ideas forward. Now's not the time to play political gotcha with a member of any political party for stepping up and bringing forth ideas to do what they think is right to help solve this problem permanently for generations of Americans to come. Now, one of the ideas that I think is important for Congress to consider is to allow a younger worker to be able to set aside some of her or his own money in a personal savings account as a part of a Social Security solution. See, I think government ought to say, and this is a concept, by the way, that has been tried before. I haven't invented the idea. As a matter of fact, the federal Congress before has said we ought to allow people who work in the United States Congress and congressmen and United States senators to do just what I described. The Federal Employee Thrift Savings Plan allows members of Congress and the United States Senate to take some of their money and set it aside in a personal savings account. Why? Because they know they'll get a better rate of return on their money than if the federal government held it. And it seems fair to me that if setting aside money in a personal savings account is good enough for a member of the United States Congress, it's good enough for workers all across America. Okay, so I went to school with a guy who made all A's. Probably recognized by now I didn't do all that well in college at times. And I brought him with me. He's an expert. He's my national economic advisor. But I want you to notice, you students out there, who's the president and who's the advisor. I've got a fabulous staff. People need to judge the president based upon who he listens to. And as you know, on foreign policy matters, I listen to some really capable people. Condoleezza Rice, the Secretary of State, Secretary Rumsfeld. And on the domestic side, I've got great people working with me. One of them is Al Hubbard, a business guy out of Indiana, started businesses, ran businesses, entrepreneurial. He's agreed to come and serve as the National Economic Advisor to the President. He briefs me on a regular basis, and one of the big issues that I've got him working on is Social Security. I want to thank you for coming, Alan. If you got something to say, now's your opportunity. Please don't try to defend yourself, because the president always has the last word.
Yes, sir. I've learned that very, very quickly. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. We wanted you to have the opportunity to come to Ohio and meet with these folks today, because Ohio's been very innovative in their state retirement system. It was created in 1935, very similar to the Social Security system, but in 1998 they started giving the faculty of their public universities the opportunities to create personal retirement accounts, which has worked extremely well. Over 40% participate, and so the rest of the state employees said, boy, we would like that opportunity as well. And in 2003, legislation was passed to give the rest of the state employees that same opportunity. We're fortunate to have with us Ray Sines, who was the legislator, who was the architect of this innovation. And Ray, would you tell us about how you came up with this idea and how it's working out and
Sure.
what's happened?
Thank you very much.
You're the guy who authored the bill?
I had the first bill in 1994.
Really?
Introduced it.
If you got any spare time, you might want to come up to Washington.
Well, Mr. President, as I told you,
with me.
I really like Lake County. Well, in 1994, we had a problem in the colleges and universities in attracting professors, retaining professors, and one of the problems was the retirements. A lot of times they stay for a short period of time and they move on. Ohio had only one system for them to be involved in. We looked at the problems associated with our plan and said we need an alternative retirement plan. Put it together, and not unlike you're going through, it was a difficult sell to begin with, not only from the retirement systems themselves, but from employees and also legislators. Well, I thought it would be a good idea to get the most influential Democrats, me being a Republican, to co-sponsor the bill and be involved in moving this legislation forward. We were very successful, Mr. President. 90-4, the bill passed, which started Ohio down that road to look at other alternatives for the system, to provide other opportunities for people. I have 3 daughters, and kind of in the same mode as you, we're in a special club when you raise daughters.
Yeah. Your hair is about as white as mine.
Yes, it is. It's getting whiter. It's getting whiter. They're all working now. They're all paying taxes, and they're all involved, and I have 2 grandchildren. But I look at what can we do to make their transition. I'm going up the road. They're going down the road. And we need to create more opportunities. To be honest, Mr. President, it's worked in Ohio. These alternative plans for not only universities, but other public officials and employees are working. We need to find a way to provide these same opportunities of investment, of portability, of flexibility for everyone in this country. I commend you for taking the challenge.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks very much. Good job. It must make you feel good to be able to sit here and in front of all these TV cameras and say, I saw a problem, I worked with people from both sides of the aisle to fix it, and it's working. That's the spirit that people in the United States Congress must hear. It's not time to play politics, it's time to fix a problem. It's time to set aside all this business about, my party may look good, or so-and-so may look good and so-and-so may look bad. We really got an opportunity, or need, to fix it. And secondly, I just want you to know that like you went through, there were some moments as to whether or not you thought the thing would pass.
It took a few years.
Yeah, well, that's, something?
Yeah.
I'm going to be relentless on the subject, because I believe the American people, once they understand there's a problem, once they understand the math, and once seniors understand that nothing's going to change, the next question to members who've been elected is, why aren't you doing something about it? See, if there's a problem, you saw the problem, and people begin to recognize the nature of the problem and the size of the problem and the costs of inactivity, and senior citizens understand that the propaganda they may have heard about somebody taking away their checks simply isn't true, the next logical extension of the debate and the discussion is, say, if we got a problem and I'm going to get my check, what are you going to do about my grandkids? It's a generational issue, and we're just starting. So don't worry about me, Ray. Feeling pretty good about where we stand. The American people are wise. They just need to know the facts. Part of the facts is understand we have a problem, and part of the facts will be what you're going to do about it. And today, this is an interesting opportunity for people to see a system that has worked. I bet most people in America don't understand what happens here in Ohio when it comes to the retirement systems. And so thank you for being an innovator, and thank you for being a leader. Now, who's next, Hubs?
Mr. Scott Johnson, who is very involved with the Ohio Public Employees Retirement System, and he can describe this new innovation that Ray provided through the legislature.
Tell us what you do.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Scott Johnson. I'm Governor Taft's Director of Administrative Services. That's a central services organization similar to your General Services Administration,
right,
only adding human resources and personnel. Because of that position, I'm a trustee of the Ohio Public Employee Retirement System. And as Mr. Hubbard told you, we began in 1935. I think the state recognized that cities and counties and townships and schools and universities all had a variety of retirement systems, or no retirement system, and more likely, and that there needed to be one on a state basis. And so we've been running a traditional defined benefits retirement system since that time, outside Social Security, and with some degree of pride, I'd say, done a little better than Social Security has over that period of time. But
Defined benefits, make sure people understand what that means.
that means that your benefit is based upon your time in service and your age and the salary at the time you retire, and you're guaranteed that amount of money.
Right. Formula fixed by government.
Formula's fixed by government, and there is a fund to which employers and employees contribute, which is not used for other purposes.
Yeah, that's
only for that purpose.
a little different from the federal government.
And perhaps the basis of doing a little better.
That's right. By the way, I went to West Virginia the other day and saw the asset base of the so-called Social Security Trust. You know what it was? It was about 4 or 5 file cabinets full of paper. It was the IOU left behind from one hand of government to the other hand of government. Go ahead.
Well, we've been operating that since 1935, but of course society's changed a bit over that period of time, and it began to be obvious that people were in need of some portability, and had begun to ask for some choice. And Commissioner Sines' initiative was the first means of addressing that university professors needed to have some choice in their retirement systems, and were provided that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Presidents do that sometimes. Portability. So if somebody's listening, they're not exactly sure what that means and why that would be important to them.
Well, university professors typically move around,
Right.
and in mid-career may move from one university to another. And so they've already gotten some sort of retirement system underway and would like to move that from where they are to where they're
So
going.
if they change jobs, they could take their retirement account with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's important for people to know. That's a concept that's an important part of any good plan, will be to recognize the needs of the person that is receiving a part of their retirement. They can move. Go ahead.
Well, of course, university employees thought that might be a good thing for them also, and so that's now been extended to all university employees. And then in 2003, the General Assembly, in its wisdom, authorized a member-directed defined contribution program, so that a member of PERS, the Public Employee Retirement System, could manage his or her own account. And then went one step further than that and said, we'll increase your number of choices by permitting you to combine those two, so that you could have part of your account managed by yourself and part of your account managed by the professionals that handle the defined benefit program. So the result of that is that any individual now, any new member of the Public Employee Retirement System, can make a choice as to whether he or she wants to manage that individual account or wants to be a member of the defined benefit program. There still are people who begin and expect to have a 30-year career and wish to be part of that system. There are others who have no understanding that they're likely to work for the state longer than a couple of years, and they're going to want to manage their own. So
I think that's a reasonable concept, don't you, folks? Government says to people, you have a choice to make, you know?
So what you therefore have with that combined program is a system where the portion that the employer, the state or the county or the city contributes is administered by the professionals at the system, and the amount that the employee himself or herself contributes could be managed by that employee. Mm-hmm. There are 9 alternatives that an individual can use. 3 of them a mixture that allows you to choose between aggressive and not so aggressive and conservative. And then you can also, if you wish to do so, manufacture your own asset mix if you want to be that much involved in the system. So what we've provided for people is some ownership over their account and some choice as to how that investment is handled.
Yeah, I guess you can't take the money and put it in the lottery.
Well, even though we run an lottery, Mr. President,
Trotters or whatever it is next door here, you know.
no, sir, you can't do that.
The point is that there is a relatively conservative or conservative mix of what's available for people to invest in. Is that an accurate assessment of the choices people have to make?
The choices are all responsible ones, Mr. President, but there
Don't
is
worry about the lottery being irresponsible.
but there is a great deal of variety and individual ability to be aggressive or not so aggressive as one chooses.
That's right. See, it's an interesting concept that the people of Ohio put in place, and the government basically said, hey, why don't we trust people? After all, it's their own money. Why don't we give them a chance to... But you just can't go, I mean, there is a certain set of parameters, I presume, Scott, that just like there's for the federal employees, by the way. In other words, here's some options for you. Some people think about, whether or not people ought to be allowed to invest. They call it risky. I don't think it's risky to let people earn a better rate of return on their money, but obviously there's some parameters. There's some go-bys, and as you said, I think there's 9 different options. Yeah. So in other words, the government does play a role and says, here's 9 different opportunities for you to have a mix of stocks and bonds. Can you go totally bonds, totally stocks, or is there generally a mixture? How does it?
Mr. President, there are layers of choices you can make. You could, if you wish, choose one of 3 pre-mixed options.
Got it.
One would be conservative, one less conservative, and one frankly aggressive. Or you could, if you wish, develop your own asset mixture. You could have some bonds, you could have some equities, you could have tips. Conceivably, you could invest it all in bonds.
Yeah.
You could do that if you wish to do so.
You got any average rate of return on these programs, or is that impossible to do?
It's not impossible to do, but it's beyond my level of expertise.
Okay. Well, I was talking with Senator McCain, who told me that he thought his rate of return, I think, was over 7% in his employee retirement thrift savings plan over time. In other words, the conservative mix of stocks and bonds that the federal government allows federal employees to make got him a rate of return of over 7%. And see, if you're keeping your money in the Social Security system, it's about 1.8%. And the difference for a younger worker between 7% and 1.8% over time is a lot of money, because interest compounds, it grows, money grows over time. And I think that's one of the reasons why employees said, if it's good enough for professors, why don't you let me have a taste of this too? Why don't you give me a chance to watch my money grow and let me control it and let me own it? So I appreciate you bringing that forth, Scott. Thank you.
Sure.
Very good job. Betty Young, welcome. What do you do, Betty?
Thank you, Mr. President, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. I'm the Executive Director of Human Resource Services for the University of Cincinnati. My job includes the oversight of state and university-sponsored benefit ones, the key one being retirement programs. And part of those retirement programs is administering the state-sponsored ones and also working with the initial implementation of the Ohio Alternative Retirement Program that Commissioner Sines promoted. The Alternative Retirement Program in Ohio is a defined contribution plan, which again means that the employer makes a contribution, the employee makes a contribution, but it is a personal account for that employee. The employee works with from 7 to 9 different providers in the state of Ohio and can select whatever mix of retirement investments will meet their needs. The advantages and the benefits of the program, as Mr. Johnson pointed out, Being a university, our faculty was very aware of the need to have a program that would give them portability and flexibility throughout their career. And the Ohio Alternative Retirement Plan does that. You have portability, so again, if you should leave the university and move to another university or leave the public sector altogether, your retirement fund in the Ohio Alternative Retirement Plan will still continue to grow because your investments will, still garner interest and earn income on those dollars. It is also portable, so as you move from one state university to another, you can also roll over your accounts in other public retirement funds or invest if you should go to the private sector and roll over those funds in things like IRAs or a 401k. Also, the funds they work very well in terms of it gets employees engaged in understanding their retirement and starting to think about their retirement at an earlier age. One of the things that we found at the university is we need to work more aggressively to get at our younger workers who tend to have low numbers when it comes to participating in voluntary tax deferral vehicles or looking at their retirement and starting to build a valid plan to prepare for their retirement earlier. And we find that programs like the Alternative Retirement Plan will do that. You can invest in a variety of investment vehicles, and those range from how aggressive you want to be with stocks to there are fixed income ones. So if you want a guaranteed return of interest on some of your investments, those are options that you can select. Also, if you want something that will give you moderate growth but not necessarily be an aggressive fund, then you can select from a variety of bonds or other types of investment vehicles. The main thing about the program is it gets employees involved. I myself I'm vested in Social Security, but when I came to the university, I was given that choice whether to stay in the standard state plan or move to the Alternative Retirement Plan. Since I figured I still had some career goals that I might be looking forward to, I did want a retirement vehicle that was going to give me some options as well as help me, start thinking about it. When you're 20, you don't. When you hit 40, you start saying, well, maybe I need to. And the Ohio program is a very expansive.
You don't look a day over 39.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. But the Ohio Alternative Program is a very good program because employees get quarterly statements, and most of the vendors provide online services. So if you want to check your account daily, be extremely involved in the management of that account, or meet with your financial planner and advisor on a quarterly basis just to access and look at how your account is doing. The key is that it now gets the person engaged in thinking about how do I best plan for retirement to meet the needs.
In other words, there is a new culture in America when it comes to people managing their own assets. 401ks encourage management of your own assets. IRAs. In other words, more and more people in America are now becoming used to controlling and managing their own money. I presume you find a certain reticence initially when somebody says, I'm not so sure I can do this.
But you don't have to be a Wall Street whiz.
Yeah.
For example, the university requires that the different providers that offer these programs, that they provide educational materials. For example, we bring them on campus for a general benefits fair, so employees get a chance to talk one-on-one, and any of the company representatives are available for individual counseling, whether coming to the university or coming to your home.
Or on the internet.
And you have access.
That's good. You know, interesting thing that Betty talked about was encouraging people to open up a quarterly statement, or if you so choose, you can look at your, wealth on a daily basis. I think that's an interesting concept. It seems like we would like our America doing that, watching their assets grow. Not just Wall Street wizards, but everybody. I mean, more people own something. I like the idea of having a program in Ohio where it encourages ownership. Not just, one type of person. But all people have got access to ownership. It seems like to me a more hopeful America is going to be one in which people say, I'm watching my assets grow, and a more, let me just say that politicians will be, their actions will be a lot more scrutinized when somebody is watching whether or not the decisions made in Washington has affected their worth on a daily or quarterly basis. In other words, the more people paying attention to their assets, the more people will be paying attention to what happens in Washington, D.C. or in Columbus, Ohio. So thanks for bringing that to my mind. Let me ask you this. Obviously, there's a certain role for the state, and that is the state has chosen the providers. Is that right? Screened and chosen the providers?
Yes. The Ohio Department of Insurance screens and chooses the providers that participate in the Ohio Alternative Retirement Program.
So the charge that somehow a fly-by-night is going to get a hold of somebody's retirement account and fritter it away is just frivolous.
Correct, because if there's ever a problem, for example, with one of the providers, then as the person that manages the program at the University of Cincinnati, then I can contact the Department of Insurance.
Sure.
Or go directly to that company about any issues that we may have.
One of the other things that Betty talked about was mixing risk. And people need to understand that you can constantly change the risk of your asset base. That, for example, if you're 20 years old, you can take a little more risk. And when it comes time fixing to retire, you switch from perhaps stocks, a mix of stocks and bonds, to a greater mix of bonds to stocks, so that you're able to decide for yourself what kind of asset base you have relative to where you are in the retirement, how close you are to retirement age. And I presume people are doing that, constantly switching in and out all the time to manage their assets.
Correct, and the providers will sit down and work with individuals to help assess first are their goals in the future, what's their tolerance level, how aggressive do they want to be. And again, using myself for example, I meet about quarterly with my ARP provider, and we sit down. He brings a statement which outlines how my assets are allocated, how they're doing, what are the projections on them, do I want to change anything, recommendations for you may want to shift assets. He knows I'm a moderately conservative, so I have like funds in a portion that is guaranteed 6%. That won't change during the life of the account.
How about 6%? It's a lot better than 1.8% in the Social Security system, and the difference between the 6% and the 1.8% over Betty's lifetime is a significant amount of money. And that's important for people to understand. What we're trying to do is to learn from lessons from a state like Ohio, apply it at the federal level, so workers get a better deal. And part of a better deal is a better rate of return. And part of a better deal, by the way, is saying I own it. You listen to Betty's language. She's talking about her assets. She's not relying upon the government. She said, these are my assets, and I own these assets. And that's important. The more people own an asset, and the more people are better able to say, I want to pass it on to my son or daughter, whoever I choose, the better off America is. You see, being able to spread wealth. Thank you, Betty. Good job. Let me say one thing about the Social Security system before we get to Rick. Do you realize the system today is structured so that if you are, if you die early and you leave behind a spouse, say you started working and contributing to the system at age 21 and you died, at 51, 30 years of work, and you leave behind a spouse, and the spouse works, like many families in America, there's two spouses working, and the spouse is the same age as the husband or wife, there are no death benefits if you're younger than 62 years old. And secondly, when the surviving spouse retires, he or she will get to choose between the survivor benefits or the contributions that he or she has made to is owed by the government, whichever is greater, but not both. Now think about that. That's a system in which the person who's worked for 30 years has put in the money and it's just gone. I don't think that makes sense for a good retirement system. The system here in Ohio essentially says that if the principle were applied to the federal government, you have an asset that grows. You watch it, you manage it, and if you pass away, you can leave it to your spouse to help that person transition, then help that person live life. In other words, it's an asset. It doesn't, this asset doesn't exist in a file cabinet in West Virginia. It's yours. It's an asset that you call your own that can help you. Now, when people retire here, I presume you can't spend all your asset base at once. I mean,
You could take a withdrawal on a lump sum basis, but normally, again, your ARP provider is going to work with you to design how you should now start drawing down on your money to ensure a level of income throughout your remaining life.
right. That's the vision at the federal level for a personal account, is that there will be a drawdown to help complement the check, whatever big it's going to be, from the federal government. All I'm telling you is we made promises to younger workers we can't keep. In other words, we said we can pay you, we can't. Do you realize that in order to make sure that the payments that we promised to retirees are kept, that a younger worker may have to pay upwards of an 18% payroll tax? Try that on if you're a small business owner. Try that on if you're struggling to get ahead. We need to fix it now, and a part of making sure the retirement system works well is to listen to the example right here in the state of Ohio. Rick, ready to roll?
I certainly am.
Okay, what do you do?
I'm currently one of the directors of the Lake Metro Park System. We want to welcome you back to Lake County. The last time you were here,
Yes,
we
I used
hosted,
your park. Thank you.
Yes, you and 20,000 friends came and had a good day.
I hope Latourette stayed behind to clean up.
Steve got busy. He was there, but he was watching us.
Okay, yeah. He was an executive.
Exactly. The reason I'm here, I'm a summary of everything that's been going on. I'm a new member into the public employee retirement system. I recently retired after 30 years in the newspaper business, so I have a vested pension, 30 years in Social Security. However, when I started evaluating my second career, and I went into the public sector, and I looked at the retirement system, I was amazed at the differences. In the private sector, you really don't pay attention to it. You don't think about Social Security. You think it's something down the road that's going to be there when you draw on it when you retire.
Yeah, the government's going to take care of it.
Exactly.
But the government hadn't taken care of it for younger workers.
As I got into this, and I realized you not only can now it's changed. The public employee system has changed. There's three choices. In the old days, you had a traditional plan, and the experts managed your money. When I joined, it can be done. I can choose the traditional method, the member-directed, or the combined plan. I chose the combined plan, which is a mixture of both. I have experts managing part of the money, and I get to choose the funds I want to manage my portion of the money. And that just started, I believe, 3 years ago is how that works. So I'm a representative of the new sect. The reason I chose the combined plan after studying it was interesting to me to have the opportunity under 9 funds to choose from very aggressive to very conservative to bonds to stock index, the whole gamut we've been talking about. I enjoyed the opportunity to do that and let the experts have a portion of it to protect my conservative side. Well, my first year just got completed and I had a 7.1% return. As you had mentioned earlier, pretty much the way the conversation seems to be going. I was very pleased with that.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
How'd your money do in the Social Security system?
Yeah, 1.8, I think, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You take 6% differential or 5.2% differential over a number of years, and you're going to see some serious money.
Right.
And it's your money, and it ought to grow. The government ought to give opportunities to our fellow citizens to have their money grow with a conservative mix of stocks and bonds, just like they did. Seems to make sense to me. Go ahead.
Well, Mr. President, one of the things that I found very helpful and interesting is that the system does a good job of educating. Because you come in and you're not sure what to do, and many people are afraid of change. They had a battery of questions you could answer, I think 20-some questions, and it sort of guided you as to where you fit on the investment scale. If you answered the questions, it would give you a score, and the score sort of categorized you into you're okay to aggressively do it, conservatively do it, moderately do it. So people who are afraid of it and don't know, you answer this battery of questions, and it gives you a pretty neat answer.
Yeah. See, that's an interesting point. I think some people are fearful of the obligation, I guess is the best way to say it, of investing their own money. They're not exactly sure what the words mean.
Right.
It's kind of an interesting assumption here in America that, the investor class is only a certain type of person. I don't buy into that. I think all people are capable of learning what investment means. People from all walks of life, all neighborhoods have got the capacity to manage their own money. And you say the system helps people.
Yeah, I was
learn
impressed.
the words and learn what all this means. I mean, it's a kind of fancy, rate of return and bonds and stocks.
And the nice thing about it, too, as Betty mentioned earlier, you can change. If you realize, I went real aggressive, and then your lifestyle changes for whatever reason you want to change, you can get online. You can do it daily if you so desire. You can take your quarterly statement, analyze it, make changes appropriately if you so desire.
Yeah.
It's not like you're stuck with the choice you made.
How do you make sure, these firms don't gouge you when it comes to fees? They've got a captive audience, They got you pretty well roped in once you make the decision. And how does the Ohio make sure that these fees aren't going up, that they're reasonable?
The fees are defined, Scott will know more than I do, but if I read right, the fees are defined depending on the plan you chose. I think the plan I chose are about 0.24, if I'm not mistaken.
0.24, sounds reasonable.
Mr. President, Betty will have a comment about the alternative retirement system also, but under the state's retirement system, the member-directed funds get the benefit of the size of the entire fund, and for that reason, the funds are lower than competitive.
Yeah.
So
you got somebody watching to make sure that one of the providers doesn't start running up the management fees on somebody.
The system is different with the alternative retirement fund, where you actually are working directly with providers, but they're able to deal with that also. In the state system, you're dealing with a fund that the retirement system created, and the fee that we charge a member-directed account like that is substantially less than you'd get on the outside.
Well, I appreciate that. What else you got, Ricky?
Well, the interesting thing is, since I was born before 1950, I don't have to worry about Social Security since I'm over that age group. However, I have 2 daughters, one of which is a third-year law student, Case Western Reserve here in Cleveland. I have a second daughter who's here today visiting you. She's a junior at Ohio University, and it's for her and others down the road that I have become convinced, after studying both the private side and being involved now in the public side, that the opportunities it's what they have to have for the future.
Well, I appreciate that. Listen, thanks for sharing this with us. When I got on the airplane, I started paying attention to what I was going to hear today, and I was amazed at the willingness of the great state of Ohio to think differently on behalf of the people who live here. And it struck me about how relevant this conversation was going to be for others to listen to what is possible for Social Security. Now look, we need to come together in Washington, and we need to work on a permanent fix. All options are on the table. But part of that solution, in order to make this a better deal for younger workers, is for people of both parties to trust people with their own money, to devise a system that would work similar to the state of Ohio, that would say, we're going to let you earn a better rate of return for your money, that would enable a mom or dad to pass on their assets to whomever they chose, that would encourage portability. But that makes sense. It makes sense. The more somebody owns something in America, the more they're going to have a vital stake in the future of this country. The state of Ohio has incorporated a lot of really important principles in this bill, right? And I want to thank you for that. And one of the key principles is government's got to trust people. The more government trusts people with their own money, the more content, the more prosperous our society will be. And so I want to thank you all for sharing with us. I hope you found this as educational as I have. I look forward to... Good job. I look forward to continuing to take this message to the people of the United States of America. I have great faith in the wisdom of the people of this country. And I fully understand that when the people of this country understand the depth of the problem that a young generation of Americans is going to face, and when senior citizens understand that they're going to get their check, the question is going to start to be to members of Congress of both political parties, how come you're not fixing it? Because Americans will realize that every year we wait, it's going to cost a young generation of Americans $600 billion to make this right. And here's a fascinating idea. Started right here in the great state of Ohio, sponsored by both Republicans and Democrats. That's working. And Congress needs to pay attention to things that work. Thank you all for coming, and God bless.